So there's a major update related to the 238 men that were sent to CECOT torture prison in El Salvador. You've probably seen that the Trump administration did a swap where he sent them to Venezuela in exchange for 5 Americans. There were lots of civil rights, human rights, constitutional rights, and international rights that were broken in this deal that I'm going to tell you about. Now, while I'm happy to see the family members greet the Venezuelans that were sent back to Venezuela, meet them at the airport. I hear Andre Hernandez Romero, who a lot of people were asking me about. I'd actually done a video on him, was about to hit publish, which is now a little bit outdated because he is amongst the 200 or so Venezuelans that were returned to Venezuela. So I'm going to tell you about the laws that were broken that was related to this. And even though this exchange has happened, the parties that are responsible for this mess, this is actually a mess, are going to be held responsible for the civil rights, human rights, constitutional rights, and international human rights laws that they broke in process of all of this. Ultimately, because Donald Trump, no matter what he says, oh, you don't have to worry about elections anymore. There are going to be elections, and yeah, they're trying it, but they're not going to succeed. So I'm going to tell you about the laws that were broken and what we can expect on the other end, what's going to happen with these men. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned. First, the civil rights and constitutional rights that were violated. On the 9-0 basis, all 9 justices of the United States Supreme Court told the Trump administration that they have to afford due process, meaning the opportunity to hear and present evidence to refute the allegations by Donald Trump that these people were members of a violent gang called the Tren de Agua, a Venezuelan gang, that he had said was part of an encroachment. Donald Trump, on March 14th, 2025, created an executive order saying that, declared that the TDA gang, like essentially a terror organization, and he invoked this law called the Alien Enemies Act that said that if there is some country that we're at war with, or they have some encroachment, meaning they sent people in the country, we have the right to remove them summarily without process. And we've done that in the War 1812, we did that in World War I and World War II. So based on that law, Donald Trump gathered about 238 Venezuelans, or just people, and he entered an agreement. Marco Rubio broke an agreement with Bukele, who was the president of El Salvador, to house these people in his torture chamber called CECOT. Part of that agreement was that they were supposed to be people who had gone through the criminal process, and they were gang members. They had to be criminals, they had to be Venezuelans, and they had to be gang members. That is the understanding that CECOT had. That is what Marco Rubio said to them. That agreement was breached on day 1. How do I know? Let's tell you how I know that. I know that agreement was breached on day 1 because, hello, I'm JJ Legal on social media. I am inside the dockets of all the various different lawsuits filed against the Trump administration. And in the dockets, and some of these challenges to this action, this rogue activity, was a lawsuit filed by the ACLU on behalf of some of the men that were there, on their way to be there, or threatened to be there. And the judge Jim Boseberg was assigned that case. And between March 14th and March 15th, Jim Boseberg said, do not send people away. Donald Trump and them did it anyway. Emil Bouvet, who all the Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee voted to advance to be a lifetime appointed judge. According to a whistleblower, Erez Runeri said he told them to ignore the judges. They're trying to hide the fact, and this is not me saying this, is coming from a whistleblower, and ignore the judges. Even though the judge orally had told Drew Ensign, Department of Justice attorney, that he did not want any planes to be flown or leave the jurisdiction of the United States, Drew Ensign said that he told his folks that. And Drew Ensign, according to the whistleblower, was aware, and Emil Bouvet was aware that Drew Ensign was risking contempt. That's in the documents. And later on, I'll do a video going through them. So they're aware they're risking contempt. And Emil Bouvet, according to the whistleblower, said, F the judges. They did it anyway. So Jim Boseberg, even though that case was removed from him, the Supreme Court at some point, I've talked about in my videos, removed the case from him, he still says, I'm still continuing on with my criminal contempt because I have an opportunity to get an independent prosecuted, not part of Pam Bondi's Department of Justice, to prosecute whoever it is that sent those folks there. One of the people that it is Imo Bouvet, who the United States senators, the Republicans, the Judiciary Committee just sent off to be a lifetime appointee. One of the people subject to potentially is the one that's subjected to the criminal contempt that Jim Boseberg has said. Anyway, I digress. In the dockets that I'm watching, several declarants, including women, including people who were not Venezuelan descent, said they were returned. So on day one, the Trump administration did a sloppy ass job because they got people who were not, and the CECOT said, we have standards. This is a male prison. Why are you sending us women? They were just gathering random brown people of Venezuelan descent. So how do they find them? They find them because a lot of them were seeking asylum. They were leaving. So the constitutional rights that they violated and the civil rights they violated was the right for those people to say that we are not part of the gang. And they did not. They said they're supposed to entitle. So Jim Boseberg was saying, you need to find out ways. He certified a class for all those people. And he said, give them the opportunity to prove that they're not members of the gang. You sent them on the pretext. You told CECOT, you told the El Salvadoran government, Bukele, that these were criminal gang members. And at this point, in the dockets in that case, also they also send Kim Abrego Garcia there, who is not Venezuelan, who also is not in a gang, off. There's a young man who was subject to and protected by a class action lawsuit that said unaccompanied minors that came before 2019 should not be deported. And one of them, Christian, his name is Daniel Lizardo, was also sent off. There was someone else who was sent. There were a few people who had court orders saying don't send them. So in addition to the people who had court orders, like Kim Abrego Garcia, who weren't supposed to be sent off, in addition to the women who weren't supposed to be there, and the people who were not Venezuelans, because they said you're sending us people who are not Venezuelans from other nations that we can't keep. They also had people who had nothing but a civil infraction, or who had already availed themselves to the United States government because they were undergoing the process. They were escaping Venezuela. They had rightful claim of asylum, including Andre Hernandez Romero, whose case a lot of folks were following. He's a gay hairdresser. They had Autism Speaks tattoo. Someone had a tattoo related to his nation and country. Other ones had a Real Madrid tattoos. They weren't, and their family members said they're not in any gang. They just happen to be Venezuelans. That's it. They had gone to the immigration hearing. They came here as part of the temporary protection status. They had already been vetted in order to get TPS status in the first place because you run a background check. So there was nothing about them. So those are the folks who civil rights, constitutional rights, habeas corpus rights the Trump administration violated. And then it comes to human rights abuses because they sent them, even though they were there for civil infraction or civil matter related to immigration, to a criminal torture where they said they were beaten for breakfast, beaten for lunch, beaten for dinner. They sent them to be brutalized. That's a human rights violation. Then the international law says you're not, any nation, according to international law, are not to send someone to a country where they have an inkling that person is going to be persecuted. Every single person, a good chunk of the people that are here, Venezuelans, who Trump administration picked up from the immigration court, or they flagged their names because they had asylum claims, or they were here on a temporary protective status because they were fleeing that country. And they sent them back to the country, and then international law says you are not to send someone to a country when you think they should be tortured. If they said they have a culpable claim and they're in the process of getting a claim to escape them, why would you send them back there? In the latest filings, the plaintiffs put a declaration that a person who works in Trump's Department of Homeland Security's removal office had placed in another case regarding the teenager Christian Daniel Lozado being returned. And in that declaration, she essentially said that the Trump administration has understood from the Venezuelan government that they will not stop anyone who, by a court order, is told to return to the United States. Like, the United States will work on bringing anyone who is subject back. So the plaintiff said, well, everyone's entitled to the habeas corpus, saying that they weren't supposed to have been sent to CECOT and they're not part of a gang. So they're entitled to that, even though they're no longer in the country. And I guess Trump administration is going to try to say it's moot. I still think that they deserve to be able to come back and make their claim that they're entitled to habeas corpus. They can be removed so they can continue their asylum application and stay in the country and come back. International law is broken. So it's a hot mess, and there's another side to this. On the other side to this, we have Nuremberg type trials, we have truth and conciliation committees, and all of them are going to be answered to it. Marco Rubio is going to be on the stand, Kristi Noem, who's really cruel, Tom Homan, Donald Trump if he's around, all of them who did this cruel endeavor, this whole exchange is just lawless, will be held accountable for it. Let's watch it. To watch here, stay tuned. My name is JJ Legal. I'm keeping you updated. And I'm in the docket, so I'm going to be watching because Judge Paula Zenas in the District Court of Maryland, Jim Boseberg, and Judge Stephanie Gallagher all had considered contempt. So just because they swapped those people, I'm not quite sure what's going to happen to them, because some of them may have to leave the country because they're all still subject to persecution. But on the other end, they're going to be suing. Our tax dollars, $6 million to Bukele to host these people, are going to be probably compensating these people for the civil rights, human rights, and the constitutional rights and the international rights that they were violated and how they were treated. And our tax dollars are going to pay for that. That's the other side of this. But anyway, stay tuned. I'll keep you updated some more. JJ Legal, each one teach one. And yeah, spread the word. Let other people know.